Alright, so this video is basically about my investment strategy. It's titled Getting on the Other Side of Wealth Inequality because that's something that I'm personally interested in doing. So, not too sure how this is going to look, but we'll do our best. It's by me, Tommy, and, just to be clear, this is just my opinion. I'm not like a financial expert. I'm just someone who is interested in personal finance and uh, I've just researched things on the internet for like about a year now and done some of the things that I'm going to talk about in today's presentation. Just assume half of everything I say is totally bullshit and you don't know which 50%, and even I don't know which 50% that is. So do your own research before taking any actions with large sums of money, like just for everyone's benefit. All right, here's my financial goals. My main financial goal is just to be financially independent. So what that means is my return on investment, I hope, covers my entire expenses. And then basically be able to have whatever job I want. I didn't type the whole thing in there. Typical me, right? But I want to be able to have whatever job I want, do whatever I want, and financial independence is a big part of that. I don't want to not have a job, just to be clear. Like, I pretty much always want to have a job. I just want to be able to, like, being able to work on whatever you want is, I just think it's going to be important. So those are my main goals. I also want to be like, there's just benefits. Your life is better if you have more money. It's as simple as that. All right. The biggest thing to note is that investing is not particularly that risky. It comes with some amount of risk, but if we're willing to accept certain conditions, then investing is just not that risky. Like, if uh, if we have some important skill like engineering, being good at copywriting, being good at reselling things at a higher value, like these are all careers that have decent potential and decent starting pay. Okay, if you have an emergency fund of 6 to 12 months of your expenses, then and you don't have consumer debt, if you don't have credit card debt, you're basically ready to invest. If you have some types of debt, that's fine. But basically, investing doesn't have to be that risky. Like, think about this. This picture shown here is a bread line at the Great Depression, right? This was before the FDIC, which is an organization that insures up to $250,000 in your savings account, existed. And people became poor and they had to wait in line for like bread and stuff. Well, you know what? There's like regulation in place that's hopefully designed to stop this situation from ever happening again. Also, there's this thing called the TARP Act, the Troubled Assets Relief Program. Basically, what TARP is if banks go bankrupt, taxpayers get to pay for it. So there's almost no risk that like banks and financial institutions will go under in our country. Like, if banks start to fail, we'll just fuck the citizenship. So, you might as well be as close to the side of the rich as possible. All right. Also, here's a simulation I did using the website shown here that $10,000 with a dividend reinvestment plan invested into the S&P 500 index fund in 1928, the year before the Great Depression, would be worth $51 million today. All right? That would be, you had this $10,000, it went through the Great Depression, it decreased in its value, and then you just forgot about it until yesterday. You would literally have $51 million today. All right? That's the power of compound interest. All right, here's another example. Investing is just not really that risky. This is from the 1988 or 1987 crash. Uh, Here's the cover of Time magazine. Time magazine, the crash. After a wild week on Wall Street, the world is different. Well, guess what? The world was not different. Nothing changed. The stock market went down, and guess what? It went back up. So basically, like, the strategy that we're going to employ here, it works almost all the time, every time, over a long period of time. How do we take the risk out of investing? Well, what we're going to do is commit to a long period of time, over 5 years, like probably 10 to 20 years that we want to be investing this money. So don't put money that you need for rent and hope that it's going to grow tomorrow. It's not. It's straight up, it's not. We want to set aside money that we can afford not to use for 20 years. Okay? We're not going to try to pick individual stocks for reasons I'm going to talk about in a second, and we're going to use index funds. These are a type of asset that you can own that basically outperforms every other fund that exists. All right, so let's take a look here at the S&P 500 historical data. I think there's a nice, is there a graph of it? Oh, it's this one. All right, here's some historical data. Okay, check out this. In the first situation we talked about, if we invested some money in 1928, yeah, it would have gone down, and it would have even still taken like probably like 20 to 30 years to regrow to its current size, but it would have regrown to its current size. And we're not just putting our life savings on at this point here and hoping for the best. You're investing each month, and so some monthly amount invested here got to grow over this time period, and some monthly amount invested over here got to grow over this time period, and so on. So there's very little risk in terms of investing. Like this graph, even though it's volatile, like up and down, up and down, up and down, is generally up and to the right, which is something we want to take advantage of. Having our money invested at a long period of time increases the likelihood, approaching to total certainty, that our money is going to grow. Let's take a look at another moment here. This one, 1990. Oh, here's the 87 crash, right at this point here. Now this just looks like a tiny blip relative to the rest of the chart. Okay, let's look at log scale, just because the economy grows exponentially, so log scale will map it to linear function. Like, even on the log scale, this 1987 crash just looks like unimportant to us. Here's 2008, probably some of our parents lost a lot of money during this time, but that's only if they sold at the bottom here. The way you lose money in the stock market, here's how losing money in the stock market works, all right? You invest your money in September of 1929, all right? You invested 400, let's just say that this is the dollar amount. You invested $446. Then you look at your account again in 1932, you're like, oh shit, that's $83. All right, well, you've just seen your money decrease by I don't know, what is that? 469 to 84, to 1/5 the amount, basically. And then you don't really know if it's going to go back up. Well, guess what? It's always going to go back up. If you sell at this point here, at this local minimum, you lock in your losses and you're screwed forever. Okay? Someone who sold here just lost their money. Someone who waited, they had $469. Can't remember exactly. Yeah, they had $446 in September 1929. Guess how much money they have at this part here? It's $2,800. Okay, now that's not all that you get though, because it's not just a linear mapping between these two numbers. There's exponential growth, there's dividends and compound interest and stuff that goes in there too. So actually they would have much more. If you do a proper calculation, you can see 10K turns to 51 million. What's this one here? Oh, invest for a long time, 10 to 20 years. All right, here's a snapshot of the last, I think it's the last 20 years. So this is something like 1998, and here's 2019. We can see that if we cut a small cut here of any particular moment, it may not be, I'm using my hand, I don't know why that's going to show anything, but it may not be exactly gaining over a small time period, but over a long time period, it definitely will gain. So make sure you commit to investing for 10 to 20 years. The highest performers in index fund investing are the dead because they just fucking forget that they own their account. They can't sell it. They don't try to do anything. All right, they just leave it in there and watch their money grow. All right. We're not going to try to pick individual stocks because no one can pick individual stocks. Actually, one person can. It's this guy. This is Warren Buffett. He's one of the greatest investors ever to live and who will ever live. He's picked stocks that have outperformed the S&P 500 index, but barely. He's beaten it by like 1 to 2% over his career. And even in his letter, he owns a company called Berkshire Hathaway. Even in his shareholder letters, he basically says, dude, don't invest like I did. Invest in an index fund. All right, when he dies, which sadly will be soon because he's very old. He's 88 years old. He basically says, use index funds. They outperform 80% of all actively managed funds. And that's the advice he's leaving behind for like his own family to do. 90% in the stock market, 10% in the bond market. Some people say they can pick their own individual stocks. That's total bullshit. All right. Warren Buffett, Charlie Munger, Ray Dalio, Carl Icahn. I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name. These are like some of the only people who could ever do that. That's like if me, someone who studied math for the last 10 years, said, I'm going to play basketball. Oh, by the way, I'm 5'5". I'm going to play basketball just like Michael Jordan could. It's total bullshit. These people have devoted their whole lives to coming up with analyzing companies, trying to predict how they're going to behave. We're not going to pick individual stocks in our investment strategy because that shit just doesn't work for normal people. We're going to keep things as simple as possible. What we are going to use is something called index fund. Index fund is basically a collection of stock that you buy as one thing. And an index fund tracks particular performance indicators of the stock market, like the 500 largest U.S. companies. That's typically referred to as the S&P 500. But when you buy it as a mutual fund, actually, which one's this? Yeah, this is the mutual fund version. You just buy this thing. It basically holds the S&P 500 inside of it, and then tracks that index to the best of its ability. We can see here the hypothetical growth of $10,000 invested on sometime in late 2009 as of 6/30/2019 would be about 3 times as much money. All right, so you take 10 years of not touching your money and you get 3 times as much at the end. All right, so these are the kind of funds we're going to use is index funds. They have super low risk. Okay, they have super low risk because the stock market always goes up. If you hold an index fund, okay, listen. Let's say you bought Amazon, right? And Jeff Bezos dies in a helicopter crash, like tomorrow. The stock market for that particular stock going to crash. All right, it's just going to do worse for a long period of time. But if you own every stock in the U.S. economy or in the top 500 stocks, let's just say, your risk is minimized because Amazon's impact on the overall economy, while it's high, is not necessarily going to be like ruining the index fund. Okay, so these funds have pretty low risk. Here's what I personally do. I own a Vanguard fund. It tracks a particular index. I use one called VTSAX. What VTSAX is a total stock market index fund. It basically tracks every single one of like 4,000 individual publicly traded companies. So if you can buy a stock of this company, this fund owns stock in that company. All right. Here's why I like it. The risk is as minimum as possible. Let's take a look. Actually, I don't know the answer to this, but let's just compare the growth here. 10,000 invested in 2009 becomes 39,000 today. The S&P 500, 10,000 invested in 2009 becomes 32,000 today. So VTSAX actually has a higher hypothetical output growth, and the reason it has that is because risk is minimized. Like we didn't experience like volatility in order to get there. We just capped the downside by basically owning Vanguard Total Stock Market Index Admiral shares is an investment in the U.S. economy. The way that this fund goes down in its value over a long period of time is if the U.S. gets like nuclear bombed its entire East Coast, Yellowstone caldera in Montana fucking explodes, and dust goes all over Mountain Time Zone. A refugee crisis of people from Ohio as a result of the explosion have to move to Canada. Like these are the scale of events that cause the U.S. economy to fail. If you're betting that the U.S. economy will exist, then this stock is like 100% guaranteed to earn money as long as we're committed to holding it for a long period of time. Vanguard total VTSAX has one downside, which is that it costs $3,000 to own the fund. All right, that's kind of a lot of money. If you can't afford that, what you should do is get like an app on your phone. Get this app on your phone. It's called Robinhood. It's not as full featured. Like if you're just barely getting into investing, you want to try it out. Get Robinhood. I don't know why I'm saying it like that. And buy this. When you have Robinhood, buy Vanguard Total Stock Market ETF. It's very similar to it. And in fact, I think its holdings are exactly the same as VTSAX. Someone can just let me know how wrong that was later. But if you buy the ETF version, you don't need to have $3,000 in order to purchase the ETF on Robinhood. But the reason that I use the Vanguard fund, the mutual fund version, is not just because I'm a rich bitch, but a couple reasons. The first one is that the Vanguard fund, or rather the mutual fund version of this, VTSAX, you can own decimal numbers of shares. So it works like a bank account, right? Even though each share of VTSAX costs right now $74, like if I had $75, I would own one share plus like 1/75th. Right? You're allowed to own decimal number of shares. That's the number one best way to have it. All your money is going towards growth in that case, as opposed to like if you use the Robinhood version, you pretty much so hold on. Like if you look at this Robinhood Vanguard Total Stock Market ETF, it costs $152.55. You need $152.55 in order to own it. And if you have less than that, you can't own a partial share. All right, so not all of your money goes to work for you right away. The other thing I like about it is this expense ratio. Okay, so the expense ratio is just money that goes to the company that owns the stock market share. There's other companies other than Vanguard that hold similar mutual funds, but the Vanguard's the one I like. But this expense ratio is 0.04%. So in parlance, we'd call that like 4 basis points. But basically what it means is that if the market goes up 7% this year, you will see 6.96% of that. All right. Basically, it's just some money that the company gets for helping like distribute the assets collected within the fund. But basically, totally worth it. Otherwise, you'd have to own individual stocks yourself and study the market and stuff. All right, that's one thing I like about it. And the other thing that I really like about it is dividend. All right, dividend is like the sickest thing. I wonder if it shows what the dividend yield. Where's the dividend yield? Dividend yield is basically like money that you get just for hanging on to this account. All right. So let's just say that I just know the dividend yield off the top of my head is about 1.8%, right? For Vanguard total stock market. So let's just say I have 100,000 in my bank account. 100, 1, 2, 3. All right. Is that true? If I have 100,000 in my bank account, every year Vanguard will give me 0.18. No, this can't be right. Hold on. 100. 1, 2, 3. 0.18. Hold on, I don't know how to math right now. Basically, the way that the dividend works is that you just get paid for owning the share. All right. So I know, like, for instance, in my actual Vanguard account earlier this year, I made like $250 just for having the fund. So I don't know exactly how much, like, where the number is. Yeah, I don't want to spend time doing the calculation just because I have no idea what I'm talking about right now. But basically, like, you earn money just for hanging on to the fund. So for instance, in this area here, between, like, let's just say we had like VOO or VTSAX between 1930 and 1940, like, even though the growth isn't really that much, it's still pretty much a lot because we get paid for owning the fund, as opposed to like your savings account, which doesn't pay you shit for owning it. All right. And then I just have it set to like reinvest those dividends back into it. I put money into the fund every month. Okay. Basically, the point of that is just to keep growing the money. I do everything in my power not to look at it. All right. You want to know why I try not to look at it? Is because, like, I know I'm showing the S&P 500. It's close enough for our purposes. But, like, check this out. When the stock market's generally going up, you feel like a genius. All right? But when the stock market goes down, like in this part here, you just feel terrible. You're going to feel awful. All right? So you just need to be ready for those kind of big swings. And if I look at it, I get sad if it goes down. And like today, it went down by 1/10%, and I shouldn't have looked at it, right? But whatever, sometimes I look. Just try your best not to, because really, you're waiting for long-term growth to happen. I own crypto, but that's just for fun. And then the other thing I do is I sell computers on eBay. Here's where I'd like to be, right? I'd like to be like an early retired person. So this is from Networthify. It's basically like a little retirement calculator that you can use and apply to your own situation. And what it shows is like how much money do you actually need to have to retire early. So this is not exactly like, I don't want to tell you guys how much money I make, but let's just say it's about 61,000. That's not. Don't worry, guys. I'm doing great, right? If I earn, let's just say hypothetically, I earn 61,000, but I just pay 30,000. Like, that's how much money it costs me to live for 1 year. So I bank half the money. Here's my current savings, just an example number, 50,000, and here's my annual return on investment. Like, most funds can give like a 7 to 10% annual return on investment. Like, I think the S&P 500s is about 8%. So you plug that in here, and then you plug in your withdrawal rate. Withdrawal rate just means like when the account is grown, you can safely withdraw 4% of it, and you just live off that money. You just live off your investments now by withdrawing 4% every year. Basically, I'll be able to retire if these numbers are accurate to my situation. I'll be able to retire in about 13 years. All right. And this thing shows like a change in how my net worth will work. Let's say so if this is my salary, and if I keep this salary throughout, of course, like, I'm hoping to get a raise by the time I'm 29 now, so maybe by the time I'm 39, maybe I'll get a raise in there somewhere, right? You can see like my net worth goes up by some amount. At the end, I'm just gonna have $817,000. Live off of that. You know, I take 4% out. The annual return is about 8%. So the money's still gonna grow, just not that much. You basically have an infinite source of money that can cover, 30,000 in expenses that you need to live as a human. And that's kind of like the strategy that I'm currently using. It's a good strategy. Like, it's fine. It's definitely going to work. It's just not that exciting for me right now. I'm looking for a little bit more excitement in my life. Why do I use Vanguard? Because they're owned by their investors. Their profit motive is to help you. And, this video's gone on for a long time, but essentially, yeah, this is my plan, what I'm currently doing for investment. I'd like to be one day independently wealthy, and I know, like, as long as I just keep a job, then I definitely will be. And you can too. You can too. Don't fall into this trap of thinking like that being on the other side of wealth inequality is just for the privileged. Okay, like this is someone who earned an adjusted gross income of $0. Yeah, I don't know. It was like something really low in 2017. Like, I just didn't earn money. Okay, and I had to like tough times back then. And anyone can reach their financial goals, like if they're willing to learn, if they're willing to work hard and be patient and have like realistic expectations, not realistic, but just like sensible expectations about how their money's going to grow, and understanding that like getting rich quick just doesn't really exist. All right, hopefully that helped someone. If you're still watching this 28 minutes in, get a life. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time.